Now, what happens to Pakistan after the British leave? The basic argument is that Pakistan started reverting to the pre-British governing mentality. And instead of building upon the institutional aspect of the imperial legacy, Pakistan's leaders consciously and unconsciously undermine the basic requirements for the creation of a legal democracy. So Pakistan starts to go back to a kind of arbitrary rule. And that arbitrary rule also becomes much more ideological and intolerant as the process of regression sets in. Some of the key milestones in this respect are the Objective Resolution of March 1949, which injects a confusion into our national discourse about the nature of the state, as to say who is to be sovereign and who is to have the ultimate authority in that state. Then the policy of rapidly replacing British military officers with Pakistani military officers between 1948 and 1951 leads the Prime Minister, Yahya Khan, to interfere in the promotion process of the armed forces. This leads to a lot of resentment. It leads to a breakdown of the insulation of the armed forces from civilian interference. Then the political leaders fail to set up a credible election machinery, with the result that whenever an election occurs, the government tries to use the civil service to rig the outcome in its favor, and the opposition, of course, cries foul. And then, of course, there are delays in the actual formulation of the constitution by the Constituent Assembly, which slowly deprive it of legitimacy and give an emerging governing corporation of civil servants and military officers led by Governor-General Ghulam Muhammad the opportunity to topple Prime Minister Khwaja Nazimuddin and establish a hybrid regime, a de facto dictatorship, in April 1953. After April 1953 until October 1958, this regime struggles to maintain a credible political facade. Ultimately, it fails to do so, and it is forced to abrogate the constitution. When President Iskandar Mirza actually abrogates the constitution, he is overthrown a few weeks later by his army chief, Ayub Khan. And that creates Pakistan's first overt military dictatorship. So during that military dictatorship, there is a tremendous amount of economic progress, at least as far as West Pakistani elites are concerned. But there is an alienation of the eastern wing. There is a failure to craft a credible constitutional mechanism. There is a crackdown on the opposition, both at the beginning of the regime and then again towards the end of the regime. And the regime itself sees the use of the civil service in order to manage a system of basic democracies, which are these small elected local governments that together combine and form the electoral college for the presidency. So you also have the beginning of the politicization of the civil service as an instrument of military rule. Now, this regime ends in 1969 with Pakistan in increasing political difficulties. There is the rise of the Awami League in the eastern wing of the country, the rise of the People's Party in the western wing of the country, and Yahya Khan, who succeeds Ayub Khan as Pakistan's military ruler, begins his rule by purging 300 plus civil servants. He promises elections, he promises a new constitution. He does in fact hold the elections, but then when the result is not to his liking, he refuses to accept it, and that plunges Pakistan into a civil war that leads to the secession of East Pakistan. So when we think about the first 25 years or so of Pakistan's history. The regression that occurs, it's truly remarkable. Within the first 25 years of independence, practically all elected institutions, political parties are very badly damaged by the experience of bureaucratic and then military authoritarianism. You also have the onset of military law, martial law for long periods of time. You also have the military interfering increasingly in the running of the country, initially helped by the civil service, though during the Yahya Khan regime, the civil service is relegated to an inferior role compared to the military. And collectively, the military officials and the bureaucrats that dominate Pakistan during this period, they don't really seem to have any answers to the pressing problems that Pakistan faces. So this exercise in authoritarianism, in Praetorianism, it ends in disaster for the country and its breakup into Bangladesh and what is now Pakistan. Now, after the secession of East Pakistan, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and the Pakistan's People's Party set themselves the task of governing what is left of the country. And they do achieve certain important outcomes. They succeed in formulating a constitution for the country, the 1973 constitution. They do succeed in establishing a kind of federal parliamentary democracy in the country. But at the same time, the actual ruling of the People's Party is often tyrannical. It is often abusive towards its opponents. It is destructive of the overall pattern of the economy. It resorts to large-scale purges of the civil service in order to make it a tool of the government. And the biggest of these purges occurs on the 12th of March 1972, when about 2,000 public servants who had normally attended office earlier in the day learn on radio and television that they had been either dismissed or removed from service or reduced in rank because they were allegedly corrupt or inefficient or both. And 6 days after this, on the 18th of March, about 500 officers of the provincial services are dismissed or retired, and on the 18th of April, 24 judges are also retired. So you have the new regime coming in and immediately shaking up, as it sees it, the bureaucracy. The goal that the People's Party government has in mind is that they want to create a committed civil service. So what they do is that alongside the purges, they introduce a lateral entry scheme that allows people who are not recruited through the original competitive recruitment process to enter the civil service structure. They also nationalize industries and services, and they hand over the management of these nationalized industries and services to bureaucrats who frankly don't really have the skill set to manage them. And the government uses the police and the civil service in order to repress its opponents and repress opposition in general to its policies. So this particular period of the First People's Party government is characterized by a tremendous lost opportunity to reset Pakistan's trajectory. Ultimately, the Prime Minister appoints General Zia-ul-Haq as his army chief, superseding about half a dozen senior generals. The Prime Minister is convinced that Zia-ul-Haq will remain blindly loyal to him and be thankful to him for this unexpected and arguably undeserved elevation. But what instead happens is that when fresh elections are held in 1977, there is an opposition movement that results, claiming that the elections were rigged, and the government is overthrown and replaced by the military dictatorship of Zia-ul-Haq. So Pakistan experiences a very short-lived experiment with legal democracy before reverting to military rule. Now, this military rule, however, is not like the military rule of Ayub Khan, because Zia is determined to use Islam as a mechanism to consolidate his hold on power. So it is really under General Zia that we see the full flowering, if you will, of ideocratic and arbitrary rule in Pakistan. General Zia's policies of Islamization effectively seek to turn the clock back in Pakistan to an imagined golden age of Islam. And Zia understands that by using religion, he can cast the People's Party, which is the left-leaning party, as being godless, as being secular, as being out of touch with what he thinks are the cultural and ideological moorings of the society. So General Zia is in many ways a transformational figure, and his legacy includes the permanent entrenchment of violent religious actors in the affairs of government and in the political process. He builds an opposition that ultimately becomes the Muslim League Nawaz in order to break the vote bank of the People's Party. And he is, of course, generously patronized during his reign by the United States after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, December. So this helps him prolong his rule, and ultimately when he is killed in a still as yet unexplained air crash, his legacy is one that continues to shape Pakistani politics to the present day.